So about last year or so, one of the most highly anticipated games of the year released, Diablo 3. After about a month or so, everyone finished playing it, and then it received some huge community backlash. It was criticized heavily for a bunch of different reasons, and eventually became an easier target than Sarah Jessica Parker. So what went wrong? Well, some common community explanations were pretty simple. Tons of, bugs, server issues on release. Gear was too hard to get, it wasn't like Diablo 2, etc., etc. Well, these are all decent explanations, but they don't explain the full picture. Let's delve a little bit deeper and explore why Diablo 3 was received so poorly. Okay, so first things first. Let's list the positives about Diablo 3. What did they do right? What was fun about the game? Before we start anything, let's expel some misconceptions. Diablo 3 was Diablo 2. It's just like it, and it actually greatly improved on the formula. This may have actually contributed to its downfall, but regardless, Diablo 3 heavily improved on what Diablo 2 lacked. And just to make sure, let's compare these games. Diablo 2 is a class-based, story-driven dungeon crawler. Diablo 3 is a class-based, story-driven dungeon crawler. Diablo 3 actually improved on a lot of the systems that Diablo 2 used, including the skill and talent system. Contrary to what some people are saying, the way skills were handled in D3 was actually a lot better than Diablo 2. They were a lot smoother, cleaner, and just overall, just better than the D2 skill trees. Your skill loadout could actually reflect what skills you enjoyed using, versus just taking a cookie cutter build off of a forum and just using that. The system D3 uses is more streamlined and actually provided a variety of different styles you could use and change on the fly. I definitely prefer this than fucking hiring a goddamn accountant just to figure out the highest theoretical DPS of this skill build. Good. The classes felt unique in nature and were fun to play. One of the higher points I can praise about Diablo 3 was its class diversity. Playing a wizard actually felt like playing a crazy psycho bitch death machine. And playing barbarian, you were the offspring of He-Man and Hulk Hogan. And probably the best of these mechanics was the strength curve. Only looking at the first two playthroughs at least, leveling up felt like discovering genitals for the first time. The first time using the death laser on the wizard, rainbows and heavy metal shot across the sky. A lot of people criticized that a lot of the classes had no differentiations within themselves, meaning that every single wizard would play exactly the same. This would be an issue if Diablo 3 was a huge open world MMO where player-to-player interaction was a huge facet of the game. Diablo 3, however, is a much more contained experience where most likely the only people you'll actually play with are your friends. Class differentiation isn't as important when you can only play with up to 3 other people. Good. So, now for the item system. Never mind. Okay, so now that we've gone through the good parts of the game, let's bash this game harder than a fat girl in middle school. Shoddy writing. So apparently the writers at Blizzard watched a bunch of Nicolas Cage movies and thought, I like where these are going. I mean, StarCraft has a deep and compelling storyline to follow, and you'd think that a lot of that would carry over into Diablo. Diablo 3 pretty much boils down to, I hope this newly found ally doesn't horrifically betray me in any way. And the worst part is, it's really fucking obvious. In the second act, the villain pretty much walks up to you snickering, going, hehehe, I'm a bad guy, but you don't know that. And they try to make it out as this huge twist scene where he betrays you. The main villain is supposed to be the Lord of Deception, Belial, but he doesn't do any of that. Pretty much you walk in, he's like, I was in disguise this entire time! And then he tries to kill you. I mean, what is this, an episode of Scooby-Doo? He just completely gives up his character traits and just tries to outright kill you. He could have been the Lord of fucking Hamburgers and it wouldn't have changed a goddamn thing. Bad. Drawn out replay value. Okay, so let me just start out by saying that I don't like judging games according to replay value, mostly because that falls into the category of monetization. But D3 incorporated and promoted its replay value so heavily into its core gameplay that it really affected the gameplay experience. This is probably its most glaring flaw in Diablo 3's design. they promoted Diablo 3 as a huge MMO experience, but Diablo 3 was basically an 8 to 10 hour single player campaign that just happened to have co-op. They also tried to make you replay the same goddamn game 4 times over. Nothing changes throughout those 4 playthroughs. The story is exactly the same enemies pop up, and the dungeon layouts are exactly the same. What made it even worse was that they substitute difficulty for challenge. Instead of making the enemies smarter and harder, D3 just increases the amount of damage they do, and just give them more projectiles or something like that. Meaning instead of the game becoming more challenging as you progress, it just becomes more tedious and bullshitty. And instead turns this into this. So you end up playing for the sake of leveling up and just hitting 60 instead of actually enjoying the game. So to top this all off, we have endgame content. Or the lack of, I should say. So a player takes 2 weeks to drudge through this game 4 excruciatingly long times, and now we've just hit 60. What do we do now? Well, I asked a lot of my friends what they were doing, and they said that they were just farming for gear. I said, wait, what? Where? How? They responded by, we're just playing Act 1 over and over again for gear. Wait a minute, so you just play the game again, and you keep on playing it? Basically the same exact thing I've been doing for the past 2 weeks? Just to receive some Skinner box gear that I keep farming from the same parts of the game just so I can keep farming more of them? Fuck, man. Okay, so let's analyze all this information. All these factors culminated into a huge mess. However, these factors do represent an aging design. I guarantee you if you gave this game to players 10 years ago, they would have went crazy for it. But except they already did. But that's the biggest glaring issue in a lot of the choices they made when designing the game. They made choices that appealed to gamers 10 years ago. Modern gamers have come to expect more from their games. Why would I play Diablo when I can get better story, replay value, and challenge from, say, Mass Effect? Or even World of Warcraft? World of Warcraft regularly adds new content, raids, and things to do once you hit 90. Games like Borderlands 2 are constantly releasing DLC every couple months just to keep the game fresh. Diablo 3 is just an archaic formula, expecting players to play the same game for months on end, depending on the same Skinner box formula that worked 10 years ago. They wag shiny new gear in front of you without any actual gameplay rewards. And all the patches they're doing right now, with the Paragon system and balance changes, are just band-aids to a much bigger design flaw. But it's not all bad. I mean, they could fix this. Let's say they reduce the leveling curve and the number of playthroughs and release DLC maybe a little bit more often. Maybe if they put the game at a $20 price point. Wait a minute.